Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Josh Wonders Why. I'm here with Kelly. Appreciate you joining me indoors today, although it's 70 degrees outside.
I'm going to be taking this paper and fanning myself in a little while.
Well, if it wasn't so loud outside, we could open the window and get a
Yeah.
nice breeze in here.
The heat's probably still on, you know.
Oh, that's true. I didn't check the
And-
thermostat. Yeah.
So that's probably it.
So welcome to Josh Wonders Why, as I said. If you're new to this experience, it's a weekly discussion that I host with Kelly where we talk about a variety of topics. Could be religious, could be current events, could be food, whatever's on our mind. So appreciate you joining us here tonight. I also appreciate you watching us and keeping up with us through Facebook. I found over the past year, I think I'm seeing more negative posts on Facebook, not from pages I follow, but suggested pages, and it seems like majority of, if I don't look at my friends and it's just the pages, majority of the pages are more negative or trying to invoke negative emotions in me, right? So I appreciate you still following us through Facebook and, watching us through this live through this group we have. So also, if you are cool enough, I want to wish you a happy Super Mario Day. Today is Mario Day, right?
I saw that on
You did.
Facebook.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saw that on Facebook.
So in case you weren't aware, today is March 10th, or MAR 10,
Yeah.
which would be Mario. So
It took me a moment, but
it's a
I figured it
stretch.
out.
But people do celebrate, and I guess video games like Nintendo, they have
That's
special sales for Mario Day.
Oh.
You can buy video games a little cheaper.
That's like May the 4th be with you.
It is. So people that like video games or Nintendo have their day as well. So happy Mario Day to everybody, and thank you for watching us.
Well, thanks, Ashley. She says you are a bright spot on my feed.
That's great.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that is what we're trying to do. So tonight, I was interested in the survey that just came out. So I printed out part of the survey.
That's part of it.
Well, it's actually like
This is all of
no,
it. It's so thick.
it's actually like 400 pages, and I didn't realize it was that thick until I looked at it. So
Yeah.
this is just the summary. There gets more than
Okay.
that. So the
Wow.
Pew Research Study or Pew Research Center has come out or released their findings from what they call a religious landscape study that they conducted 2023 and 2024. Now, they did a similar study like this back in 2007, 2014. So they do it every, I'll say, so often. I'm not sure. Seems like those years they're not equal, but they do it every so often just to understand what is the pulse of America with respect to religion. So I will also say, if you don't know Pew Research Center that conducted this, I'll just read this. They're a nonpartisan, non-advocacy fact tank that informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends shaping the world. It doesn't take policy positions. It just conducts the public opinion polling, demographic research, and just reports the facts as they see them. So they did this
And
study.
you're going to like sum this up for us, people who don't want to read stats.
So I will post a link if you'd like to go through this. I will not go through everything. So they have a variety of findings from this study, from trends in the size of religious groups, race and gender differences in religious groups, religion in childhood versus adulthood, religion in U.S. families today, religious switching, attendance in religious services, how beliefs change as people age, trends in the religiousness of Christians, and so on and so forth. I won't touch on all those. That will take a long
Yes.
time.
Yes.
I'm just summarizing some of the points that I
Yeah.
found interesting. But
I mean, the heads up that you gave me about it, I thought, well, this could be really long because I have thoughts.
yeah, well, there are some interesting trends. We're not going to unpack all of them, and then we would come back and have this for a
Yeah.
rainy day in case we had nothing else to talk about. Hey,
And
let's
you
pull out
know,
this and talk
when
about
I
it
was
more.
in seminary, that was one of the things that we, were learning. What are the trends, and why are churches declining, and what do you do about it? And so
Yeah.
yeah.
So the study they have the headline is "The Decline of Christianity in the U.S. has slowed and may have leveled off." Now, we'll get into more details about. I feel like it's sort of putting a positive spin on maybe more of a negative trend they're seeing, that hey, it's decline has stopped slowing or stopped declining as much.
Or else it's declined so much, there's not much room for it
Yeah.
to decline more. I don't know.
So a little bit more on the study they did. So they did this study, and they said they provide this study. It's called the Religious Landscape Study, and provides estimates of the U.S. population's religious composition, beliefs, and practices. They asked a variety of questions, and this was conducted from July 2023 through March 2024, so before the election year, which is probably smart. And they got about a little under 37,000 respondents, and based off the demographics, they felt that it represented the U.S. as a whole through all 50 states. One other thing to note that we'll get into maybe somewhat is when they look at the decline and they break it down into different demographics, they look at different age groups, and the age groups they're calling are called birth cohorts. So these are adults that were born every decade. So the 1940s, then people born in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So it looks at adults born within that 10-year span. And the advantage of that is they analyze these cohorts rather than conventional generations like baby boomers,
Okay.
Gen X, millennials.
That's interesting.
Because this is an equal length, whereas you have a thing that shows the different generations are a lot longer length. And it also, their thing is, looking at the decade-long cohorts doesn't carry as many assumptions or stereotypes as listing as generations. So they say, this is just this 10 years. You can born in there, you can draw your own conclusions, but we're not going to say that it's Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers, etc. So that's just the background on the study. So with that, we can get started. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to do some highlights. There's a lot more trends and stats to go through in the future. I'll put a link out there if you're a stat head or like to learn more about this. And if there's something that catches your eye later on that you want us to discuss, go through it. So I was looking through this. I had some questions, and I'm going to ask Kelly, and she's going to have all the answers for why we are the way we are in the U.S., right?
Sure.
So the first thing is, even though it says the decline of Christianity in the U.S. has slowed, what the stats show is when they look at the 2007 survey results versus now, the number of people that say they're Christian has dropped from 78% to 62%. So it is a pretty significant drop that we're seeing. Now, it has leveled off in the past couple years. They do a separate survey every year that shows that it has leveled off to about 62, 61%. But still, look at the drop from 2007 to now. It's a pretty significant drop.
Right.
They've also seen in that time the unaffiliated folks, so the nones, those are people that are atheists, agnostics, or just say they don't have any religion, that has increased from 16% to 29%. So pretty much, the drop in Christianity was the rise with unaffiliated folks.
That's a big rise, too.
So there is some interesting things I guess we can break down to that. Maybe I won't touch on too much of this, but they broke it down into various demographics, and what they have found is that for the most part, you look at like men, women, the different races, college graduate, no college, and various geographical regions, they're all down about 15 to 16%. What does stand out though is if you look at breakdown between political beliefs, you do see the people that identify as liberal, there was a change of about 25% drop in when they say they were Christian in 2007 to when they say they're Christian now. People that say they have moderate views saw a 16% drop, and people that say they're conservative only saw a 7% drop in the rate of Christianity, right?
That's interesting.
And then the other thing too, if you look at just the Protestant denomination, the non-denominational denomination. There's people that just say that they're just Christian, just Protestant, but don't give a specific denomination. That's up about 1%, but all the other religions are down. The main one, Methodist, is the one that stands out the most. That was
Not other religions, but
other denominations.
Protestant,
yes,
yeah, denominations.
Methodist does see a bigger drop than the other ones. It seems like.
I wonder, because they did this in 23 and 24.
Yeah.
Disaffiliation probably affected that number.
And they do break down even further to show GMC versus UMC, but it is interesting to see there is a decline in Christianity across the board. So the study does show potential reasons for the decline. The one thing they mention is something called generational replacement, which I never thought of before, but it makes sense. It finds that the older generations, the older birth cohorts born in the 40s and the 50s, are more devout and more religious, more Christian, they would say, And as they die off, they're being replaced with the younger generations that are less religious, less Christian, identify less as Christian, I guess. It shows that each birth cohort has become less religious as it has aged. So you're seeing less people.
Now I have a comment on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Because in the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was expected that you were a Christian. You know, if you weren't a Christian, that was odd.
Yeah.
You know, either Protestant or Catholic. That was kind of the norm. That is, it was a place where you went on Sunday and during the week, and that's where you met friends. That's where you networked, and that's where you joined groups and so forth. So I'm going to say that they may have identified as Christian more than they do now, but I don't think that reflects like a spirituality.
Yes.
So I think there are probably more people. I think everyone realizes they have a spirit or there's some spirituality to themselves. It's just how they decide to believe.
And that's a good input. So I guess that is a good, point is that it specifically looks at people that identify as Christian or Christianity. Now, they did show later on the study, and this is a good segue, they asked questions at the different age groups of how spiritual they are. And they asked questions like, do you believe people have a spirit or a soul in addition to a physical body? And all the generations, all these birth cohorts were 80 to 85% saying, yes, I believe in this, we have a spirit or a soul. And the question is, do you believe there is something spiritual beyond the natural world, even if we can't see it? All the birth groups were 70 to 80%. So it shows that across all the birth groups, the spirituality is pretty consistent. It's just the people that are identified as Christian seems to have dropped off in the younger generations.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because I think the key is, do they identify as Christian or not? They may still be spiritual, but do they identify as Christian? And I think,
I also think that it became less and less popular or appealing to identify as a Christian. And so there may be people who say, I don't identify as Christian, but they may have Christian beliefs. They may live out Christian values, but they don't want that label.
Yeah.
Because to so many people today, Christian means negative things.
Yeah. And when you see Christians that make the headlines in the news, it's mostly for negative headlines where, this religious group is speaking out against some...
It's always against.
Some group that's in the margin. Yeah, it's always against. Some group that's in the margin. Some group
that's like... one of the books I have is called Unchristian, What a New Generation Really Thinks About Christianity and Why It Matters. And it's older, it's 15 years old, but it's still very valid. But it's one of the quotes in there is, we've become more known for what we are against than who we are for.
And I think that's when I look through all Facebook feeds, that's what I'm seeing, or the news, it's just... it's a good point. It's interesting that you always see Christians against. It's never Christians are for, or Christians are, it's always trying to, Christians are trying to, what is the word? Form you into their views of what a Christian should be.
Yeah. It just always seems to be negative.
It does, yes. So it seems like spirituality is pretty consistent, but people that identify as Christian is dropping. And again, like you said, it seems like there are days where I shake my head, and sometimes I say I'm somewhat ashamed to be a Christian, if I'm honest, because of just what I'm reading about, people speaking out and
That's why I like
preachers.
To say, I follow Jesus.
Well, yeah, because there's preachers, there's religious leaders speaking out against the LGBTQIA community, right? And it's like, that makes me ashamed to be part of that, right?
Yeah, I don't want to identify with that. actually said, I saw something that said millennials are the first generation that isn't becoming more conservative as they age, as opposed to previous generations. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I found it interesting. I think that's interesting as well. Because I think I used to be more conservative when I was younger, but I think I started to learn, I think I learned what liberal means, maybe, and then I was like, oh, well, I guess I really do identify more with that.
Yeah.
But
it was too. I was more conservative as I was younger, and then as I had more experiences with people that were in these marginal groups, I was like, wow, they're, this isn't right? They need to be, on equal playing field with everybody else.
And I think also, when you're younger, things are a little more black and white. Yeah. And as you get older, you start to see all the gray, all the shades of gray, and that just starts to, you mature and you mature more and you change. Sometimes.
I wonder also as you're younger and you're taught, depending on what church or denomination you are, you taught this way, and that's how you believe it, and that's probably what your family, your parents, and your the older folks in your family believe. But as you go out and experience the world by yourself, maybe you start to change your mind more and opens your eyes to some of the stuff out there. So we got that, the generational replacement, as far as less people claim to be Christians as the older generations that are claiming to be heavily Christian are dying off. It's a little morbid, but that's what we're finding. The other thing that they're finding is has been a lot of religious switching going on. And that's not converting or changing from one Protestant denomination to another. It's switching from Christian or Protestant to Jewish or Protestant to Buddhism or not affiliated. And they said that 35% of U.S. adults have switched religions between childhood and adulthood. And it says 22% of U.S. adults were raised as Christians but no longer identify as such.
I think also there's a big difference now as we talk about aging. The people who were in their 70s, 80s, 90s, they grew up in a time where you just went to church and you gave to your church because that's what was expected, and you just you gave your offering, and then I guess you just let the church decide what to do with it, or whereas now I feel like younger generations, people younger than me, they are not interested in supporting brick and mortar. I think maybe the older generations, that was really important to have that building and to have it look a certain way, and have certain things provided for them. And younger generations, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So they're not going to give maybe to building, like building a new wing onto the church, or refurbishing the stained glass windows. They want to be part of something that impacts lives, that makes life better for some people. And I think that is showing. Yeah. I think we're seeing a lot of that as older churches, they're not bringing in younger people, or if they do, they're not, younger generations aren't like, yeah, sure, we'll take over for you and we'll keep this place going. And so churches are dying out and buildings are being sold, and it's not that oh well, this generation was wrong, or this generation doesn't care, or it's just the way things change.
I think that makes sense. And I don't know if I may have been zoning out thinking about something else, but did you say, because we're talking before that about giving the keys to the new generation, but did you mention that?
I did not say that, no. Said that earlier.
What's
before
that?
we were talking.
But maybe you say that. We were talking earlier. That is interesting, because you said the key is to give the new generation the key to the church, both physically and then metaphorically, right? And I think that makes sense, because at some point, even as a leader, you got to realize, I need to step back and let someone that's more relevant to today's culture come in and take us forward, right?
Well, and it seems like younger people are looking for relationships at church.
Yeah.
They don't want to be separated from other generations.
Yeah.
They like all generations being together, and they want to learn, they want to be mentored by older people. They know that older people have the experience and wisdom that would help them.
Yeah.
And so churches that tap into discipleship and mentoring and building relationships, younger people, they don't care if you have a praise band. They don't care if the words are on the screen. That's not what they're there for. They want relationships. And so if they feel like they are seen and loved and appreciated, and not, like, well, in my day, not trying to give them advice, but just to be interested in them, because especially after the pandemic, we are so separated, and younger generations are they're more connected online, but not in person, and they're most likely connected online to people their own age.
Yeah.
And so, you can be a small church and you don't have a praise band, and you don't have state of the art technology and things like that, and you can be a very vibrant church.
Yeah.
If you're willing to build those relationships with younger people, and yes, to say, hey, why don't you take this over? And after you guys are done playing ball, can you lock up? And when we let younger people know that we trust them, and they don't have to like pass an age test or something before you get to play it, you get to sit at the adult table, and that's where we need to really, and it doesn't even cost anything.
Yeah.
I remember when I was probably middle school, high school, it was all about church growth. How do we get more people, butts in the pews? And, but what was happening was we were trying to be so attractional that we were making everything easy, and we didn't expect anything out of people. Just come, and please give us money too. But, we weren't teaching people what it means to follow Jesus, and that it really does demand a lot.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And, we didn't disciple people. We were just happy that they were there. And I'm not saying that we're not happy that people are there, even if they don't get involved in a deeper level. But I think people want that.
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared to give that to them. You have to have people that are willing to mentor and disciple and so forth. And I think that's part of the decline, is that we built big play places for kids in the church, and had all this crazy stuff for youth groups, and and that's great. But if you're not pairing that with some substance, then once they're not kids anymore, they're like, why should I go to church?
Yeah. And that's why an issue with how they were saying this was decline of Christianity in the U.S. has slowed, may have leveled off. Based off of this generational replacement, I think it's going to continue to decline unless there's a radical change. And, that there's that, but also I think some of the churches, and I'm sure there's a very stat on here, but, I would say close to 50-50 of churches, maybe even more than that, have a more conservative view on, maybe issues that do matter more to younger adults. And they're becoming, it's like, well, if you don't, you're sort of treating me as an outcast, I'll go somewhere else. But as we're saying, spirituality across all age groups is relatively the same. So there's just a vast need for people to build relationships and maybe come back into the Christian church.
And it's not like this is the new program. No, this is the
Yeah.
original program. This is how Jesus did it.
Yeah.
And that's what works. Imagine that. And Ashley says giving ownership and responsibility to someone can be so empowering. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And we need to quit looking at younger people, kids, youth, young adults as the future of the church. They're not the future of the church. They are the church right now.
Yeah.
And we need to empower them.
Yeah.
And mentor them and love on them. Church should be a safe place for people to go. It should be a soft place to land. It should be a sanctuary, literally, and not a place where you feel judged or condemned or questioned, or God forbid, there are churches that want to change you.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Jesus never said anything about that.
And that's one of the reasons we want to start this online campus, right? Or this online group, because there are people that may have had those experiences and they're not ready to step into a physical church. They don't want to experience maybe being treated as an outcast. So that's why we set this up, is let's meet people where they are, meet them in some sort of safe place and have discussions, right? So
because there's no judgment here.
Yeah.
Well, I don't claim to have all the answers or anything. Here's Tony said, I think the younger generations probably get frustrated when they want to get involved and it's their turn to participate in leadership, but the elders fight any changes. We've never done it that way before group.
Yeah.
And and then Ashley said, Tony Sellers, how amazing would it be if the response was excitement to try something new? And I feel like the church that I pastor right now is pretty good at that. They love it when they see younger people doing stuff, like up in the pulpit, helping to lead worship and so forth. But I've also known churches that if no matter how old you are, if you're new, you are not getting into the kitchen.
The kitchen.
The kitchen.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what's so special about the kitchen?
It's protected.
Oh, okay.
It's protected. There's a certain way we do things. There's a certain order. There's a certain place for everything, and you just don't know because you haven't been here all your life.
So is that the new most holy place in the temple? Is the kitchen?
For some people, I suppose it is.
You gotta be so clean. Only some people can go in there, right?
And that's why churches are declining. Some churches are declining because they don't want to give that up. They don't want to give up that control. And part of it is because that's become part of their identity.
Yeah.
I'm the one who always makes the fried chicken, or I'm the one who always makes the sugar cream pie. And that's who I am. And you can't take that away from me, or who am I?
Yeah.
So.
We had at our church.
That's news to you, huh?
No. So at church service a couple weeks ago, we had the college students from Purdue came here from the Wesley Foundation, and because we do support them, and after the sermon, before everybody leaves, they have one last praise song, and they had the youth from that do the praise song. It was refreshing to see these young people leading us in a worship song. It was an amazing experience. And they also, one of them gave a good story that was amazing to listen to of how he was.
I'm sorry.
That's
Ashley,
fine.
I've heard you. I can just hear your mom saying that. She said, my mom's response when someone new volunteers is, "We've got a live one here."
Don't know what they signed up for, right? That's funny.
But then also on the opposite side of things, along with that, is when some churches are so accepting and so welcoming, they go a little overboard.
Yes.
With new people, and especially if you are a welcoming congregation and you see somebody come in and it looks like they're gay, or looks like a same-sex couple or something, and then it's like everybody gloms onto him. Where's it at there? Oh my God, we got one, And
you can put it on our board now. We're welcoming.
Right, mark that down. And that is so off-putting. Or a person of color in a white church. Oh, we got one. See, we're so diverse. No, they're just a person.
Yeah.
So.
That's There's other sets I want to get into, but I think I don't want to stay on. There's plenty of other stuff we can talk about. There's some more interesting trends we can talk about. We can bring the study back another time because there's plenty of stuff to unpack in here. But I think we had a good discussion just on decline of Christianity. And I think it's a good just to, recall that it's just people that say they are Christian, right? And maybe some people's views of what a Christian is differs such that they say, well, I'm not really a Christian because this is what the news or this is what, the TV or radio says a Christian is, and that doesn't fall into my values, right?
Or they say, I'm spiritual but not religious.
Yes.
Which could mean that they have Christian values.
Yeah.
But they don't want to have anything to do with religion.
Yeah.
So they're content to live out Christian values outside of organized religion or a church.
Yeah.
So, that contributes to the decline of Christianity, but not necessarily to the decline of people who live like Christ.
Yeah.
But I would also say that there are a lot of people who identify as Christian who are not living, Christian values. They're not really following Jesus, taking up their cross, reaching out to, the marginalized. And yeah.
Yeah. And if you know anybody like that, has a sense of spirituality, but craving connection, but can't find a church, that's what this online group is for. So you can invite them to it. It's probably the easiest way to invite someone to church. Yeah. Just, hey, just send them a message or send it forward I think you can just invite them to. It's a public group, right? But
it's a public group.
Yeah.
So, and even if they don't join, they can still,
they
can participate anonymously.
Yeah.
And, that's just part of what we do, is that we're not about, let's get more members. It's about just being a group where people can feel comfortable and, and just find community where they're not being judged or, and they don't have to be Christian. They don't have to identify as Christian to tune in and,
Yeah. So if you want to extend out to anybody, feel free to, tell everybody about this. I will send a link out to this, I guess. So if you want to go wild with the stats, you can. The first 19 pages is the executive summary and basically lays out the more general trends, and there's some more details there. If you're interested, I will send it out to you. And we'll have to bring this back because it is interesting to unpack. There's a bunch of other stuff that we didn't get to, like there are some stats, I'll just maybe tease on it. Looking at people that say they're Christian, it says that only 85% of people that say they're Christian believe in heaven. Only 73% of those people that say they're Christian are absolutely certain that God or universal spirit exists, which I feel is sort of, if you're Christian, it should be higher. And then also, there's some differences on political polarization, which is interesting to get to. So we can get to that in a future discussion. So
there's another comment.
Yeah, go for it.
Tony said, I think there should be room for anyone who wants to be involved, but it's when people get possessive that it causes problems. Also, if you're new to a church, just be patient, slowly get involved, and don't try to change things right away. Nobody wants to hear, at my old church, we did it this way. Yes. We also don't want to hear that from the pastor. In my old church, this is how we did.
As a leader, since you've been in the church leadership for a long time, do you hear that a lot? Like over your whole career of...
At my old church, we did it this way?
Yeah, at my old church, we did this way. Or
I've heard pastors do that.
You've heard pastors do that, okay. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's probably more common. The pastors come in and say, I want to change this church to be like my old church, right?
Yeah,
and that probably didn't go over that well, right?
The way we did it there was right, and you're doing it wrong. I don't know. And I haven't really gotten that from a lot of people. But I do think there's some people that come in and they think, I'm going to form this church into the image of what I think church ought to be, and they're not paying attention.
Yeah.
What's the vision of this congregation?
Yeah.
And if you don't want to get on board with that, well, that's fine, but you can't just come in and go, well, we ought to do this, does it fit the congregation's vision or not? So yeah, that's a good take there.
So yeah, that's what we'll get to tonight. It'll be a good discussion. I was expecting to get to more stats, but apparently everybody else loves to talk about stats as much as I do. So, or at least hypothesizing the trends, because it is an interesting topic.
I just like to say, here's why I think that trend is the way it is.
Well, it's interesting because you said both these books were written in like 2010, and it's almost like they predicted the decline, right? Because it's continued to decline more.
Happening.
Yeah, but it has declined a lot more since then, or maybe
and this Unchristian talks about, I think it's 5 different things that people who are not Christian or don't go to church, these are their assumptions about Christians, and it's spot on even today.
Yeah, interesting. So if there's any other topics you would like us to talk about, because speaking of being relevant, we have to be relevant to you. So if there's any other topics you'd like us to unpack, anything you've seen or struggled with, just let us know. We'd love to talk about it on Monday nights.
Okay, but what we really want to know is, when do we get to taste test Peeps?
So that will be the last Monday of March, whatever that is, the 31st.
Okay.
So unless you want to do it next Monday.
No, it's okay. I can wait.
So I figured the last Monday of March is a good halfway point between the Ash Wednesday and Easter. It's not really midway, but it's sort of that way. Mm-hmm. And there's some pretty good flavors we got. There's some new flavors that came out this year. I was showing them to Kelly beforehand.
I'm excited.
So yeah, it's always exciting to do that. So next week the plan is it's sort of, so with this month being Women's History Month, I wanted to unpack the the thought, or the thing that's called male headship, which is the idea that men should have authority over women in home, church, and community. I want to understand.
I might have a few comments
where that came from. Well, I figure it's good Women's History Month to basically tear it apart, right? Because I have opinions as well, but I want to understand, where it came from, how is it biblically based, and just discuss why it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And people may have different opinions, but we will unpack that next week. Maybe have some lighthearted discussion. I don't know. We'll see. The following week, we'll talk about Peeps. So thanks again for watching us. Tune in on Thursday.
Ashley says, Peeps priorities. Yes.
Yes. We still have the cutout Peep. We need to make sure to bring that out too.
Yep.
So this Thursday, we'll be back with Digging Deep at 7. And then Coffee with Kelly this morning. If you missed it, go back and watch it. And then next Monday, we'll be back talking about the fun discussion of male headship. Should be enjoyable.
Yeah, and this Thursday, you didn't ask me what I was going to talk about.
Oh yeah, sorry, what are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the age-old question of, why does God allow bad stuff to happen?
Okay. Answer it all, right?
Mm-hmm. I have the answer.
There you go. Why does God allow bad stuff to happen? Tune in live on 7 o'clock on Thursday. Until then, we'll see you later. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.